Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike Vonbeardingham here. I was asked by a YouTube viewer if I could do a video on using vocal effects in a live gig scenario. So, this is my using vocal effects in a live gig scenario video. Effect 1, Reverb. This is the most common effect you will find any singer using. Without reverb, a vocal sounds like this. It's crisp, but it's very dry, there's no atmosphere to it, there's no ambience, as they say. With a bit of reverb, you can hear it immediately adds some atmosphere to it. So if you ever go in a room, a big room, a small room, a cathedral, a church, a factory, you will hear different levels of reverb. So therefore you tailor the reverb to suit whatever song you're singing. If you want a song that has, say for example, you're very far away from the microphone and you want that real depth and grand hall sound, you'd add more reverb. So in this case, for general music, you have a little bit of reverb just to pad it out a little bit and say, add some ambience to it. So with reverb, I'm going to play a little song now, and we're going to do it without reverb, with reverb, so you can hear the difference. We're going to do Take On Me by a-ha. So I'm going to do the verse without reverb, and then the chorus with reverb. Talking away, I don't know what I have to say, I'll say it anyway. Today's another day to find you shying away. Okay, now we're going to add reverb. Take on me, take me on, I'll be gone in a day or two. So as you can see there is a vast difference between having this and this. Hello, yes. So that is where we use reverb. Now, generally, you wouldn't use that much if you're doing just an everyday pop song. You'd maybe have a tiny little bit just to give it a little bit of something. But in this case, it was an 80s tune. They had lots of reverb in the 80s. So there was that, and also because the actual song itself had a lot of instrumentation in there, a lot of frequencies being used up, and those things will mean it's more difficult for the reverb to cut through. Effect number 2, delay. I don't use delay that often, but I tend to use it with reverb for this reason. Now, delay, if I play it on its own, delay. You can hear, we get an echo that bounces off into the distance. Now that can be very, very handy, but it also on its own does sound a bit weird, and there's not many places that you would use it. Some bands, like for example The Killers, will use a very, very tight delay. So almost just like a very quick double. And I'll show you an example of that now. So this is my Killers setting. So, coming out of my cage and I'm just doing just fine. Gotta be down because I want it all. So with that, you can hear how having that delay is more like the original. But I tend to use delay, if I switch back, more with reverb for things like if I'm doing like a really high falsetto scream. Because on its own, and we should demonstrate, on its own it sounds like this. Ow! Very dull, very bland, there's nothing to it. Okay, the sound's there, it's crisp, but boring as hell. So let's try adding a bit of delay. See, we get a nice tail off, a nice doubling. But again, it still sounds a little bit empty. So let's try with just some reverb. Not bad. It's got that more kind of ethereal quality to it, more of a soaring quality. But if I add the delay with the reverb, so So you can hear, we've got the delay and the fade out of the reverb. So, sounds much nicer. And that's what I tend to use it for if I'm doing power metal vocals, or maybe even like the scream at the start of Highway Star by Deep Purple. You whack that in, it just sounds a hell of a lot more atmospheric, which is what we want when we're doing something like that. So delay has its different uses. I primarily use it for that reason, but also bands like U2, for example, if I was singing something like Where the Streets Have No Name, as I'll demonstrate now, having a bit of delay and reverb works really well. I wanna roam, I want to hide, I wanna tear down the walls that hold me inside, I wanna reach out, touch the flame, where the streets have no name. Now I'm going to turn the effects off. I wanna feel, it's just dead, sunlight on my face. Back on. I see the dust clouds disappear without a trace. I wanna take shelter from the poison rain, where the streets have no name. Effect number 3. Compression. Trying to explain compression is a bit of a ball ache, so I shall do my best. What compression does is, if you imagine a sound wave doing that, swimming along through the air very gracefully in all its little peaks and troughs, what a compressor does is compresses those high points down so that they are more similar to the volume of the quietest points. So for example, if you had a vocal performance that was lots of loud parts and lots of quiet parts, when you were to listen back to that, a lot of the quiet parts would disappear. What the compressor does is say, bring those loud parts down to a similar volume, and then what you have to do is, because the overall volume of the track will be quieter, you have to then boost the volume of the whole track with what's called makeup gain. Now, I have been using, as we've been talking here, with a lot of compression on this microphone. So even when I'm talking quite quietly, and then I'm talking really loud, you can hear that everything is still crystal clear. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to turn off the compressor. So now I'm going to talk at the same volume level. So you can hear the volume has dropped completely off. And now if I then go loud, you can hear there's quite a difference between the two. So with that in mind, now if I turn the compressor back on, there we are, I'm back. And also you'll hear in the compressor, what it also does, it brings out all the qualities and characteristics of your voice. Because when you're singing, a lot of things people won't hear. Certain inflections, certain qualities in your voice, the timbre of your voice, as they say. And with compression, especially if you're singing quiet stuff that's very emotive, you'll find that using compression on the voice will bring out all that extra flavour that you have in your voice. But there is several problems with using compression. Number one, if you're using compression in a live setting, what can happen is A, lots of feedback, B, a lot of the surrounding noise, like the band or the room, can be picked up through the microphone. Because of having to bring that gain up and the way the compressor works, it is going to enhance the amount of noise it picks up. So using a vocal compressor is not going to work great if you've got a drummer behind you smashing the living hell out of his kit, because all that you're going to get in your microphone is a shit ton of cymbals and drums, and your vocal is going to be battling to fight over the top of that. So you can probably use a little bit of compression, but it does depend on the surrounding area. I use compression mainly if I'm using like a direct input band. So if all of our instruments are going straight into the desk and there is no stage foldback. So I'll be using in-ear monitoring. I can have the compression up nice and loud so that even when I'm being quiet or I'm pushing, the general volume out the front is all the same. So you'll still, and you can tailor the compressor? Yeah, sure. You can tailor the compressor to suit your vocal style. So you may not want everything a very similar volume. You may still want a bit of dynamic between the, when you really push it and when you pull back. So you can set the compressor to however suits your voice. So that is a brief guide to compression. If people have got any questions about compression, by all means ask, and I shall try and answer them if I possibly can. So compressor is very good for making your voice sound, say, more full and bringing out the quality and clarity in it. Not so good in a live environment with lots of noise. Effect 4, doubling. Doubling's a bit of a funny one. I don't use it very often, but certain singers have a certain doubling sound to them, i.e. because what they've done in the studio is double-tracked their vocals. So, for example, take someone like Ozzy Osbourne. He double-tracks a lot of his vocals because he has a very thin-sounding voice. So that thin-sounding voice on a recording with just one track would just sound very weak. So therefore, he will double-track it to give it a bit more oomph, get a bit more girth, a bit more va-va-voom. And it creates a certain sound. If you sing quite close to the original take, you will start to get phasing, which kind of gives it an interesting kind of washy sound. So without doubling, it sounds like this. With doubling, sounds like this. So, ah. Now on this pedal, there is multiple settings that you can do for the doubling. You can have it humanized, so it's more natural, it's more unpredictable. I've got it sort of as a generic setting, but it can probably do with a little bit more playing. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sing a bit of Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne, and you can hear what it sounds like in that. Okay, so this is with double on. Crazy, but that's how it goes. Millions of people leaving his clothes without, maybe it's not too late to learn how to love and forget how to hate. So you can see the difference from that example, how having that double creates that real kind of Ozzy Osbourne sound. So it is really good, but you need to find the right songs to use it in. But Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne, there's other singers as well who use it. So by all means, if you've got the double option, just select a song in your set that it works for and chuck it in. It gives a nice effect. Effect number 5, harmonies. Now nothing will compete to the sound of individual members of a band singing together in beautiful harmony. All the different voices, all those different tones combined, especially with good singers who can really sing harmonies well together, nothing beats it. It sounds amazing. But if you're in a situation where you might be the only singer in the band, or there's specific parts in songs that you just feel need that extra backing to it, you can use harmonies. There are several problems with using harmonies. A, not all harmonies will work. So certain scales in certain songs are required for the harmonies to fit. Now, not all pedals can be programmed to get exactly the right scale that you need. So you may have to improvise a bit, maybe with the melody line, or fanny about rather a lot until you can find something that works. But depending on what pedals you're using and what setup you've got, this pedal is quite good for the fact that you can actually adjust. It's got various custom settings for scales and things like that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do a little bit of Radio Gaga by Queen.
All we hear is Radio Gaga, Radio Goo Goo, Radio Gaga. All we hear is Radio Gaga, Radio blah blah.
So I'm going to try and show you that. So we've got some delay and reverb as well on that track. I'll try and sing it with the harmony so you can hear it on its own.
All we hear is Radio Gaga. Gaga.
Now, it's really important when singing with harmony pedals, generally you have to sing really accurately and in tune, because if you don't, the sound can jump all over the place, especially the harmonies where it's trying to work out what you're singing. So if I put this back on, you can hear it jumping between notes. So you have to really make sure you're, if I'm slightly too out, can you hear where it's jumping? So I have to find, all we hear is. You have to really make sure you hit those notes. Otherwise the harmony will just go and just sound absolutely horrific. So harmonies, wonderful things, but also something you may need to consider as well. If you have got a loud band behind you and you are trying to do harmonies on a pedal, that sound behind you can interfere with what the pedal is trying to do. So you may have to tailor it to suit depending on your setup. So I hope this has been of some help. It's given you a little insight into what I use live. There are many more effects out there that you can use, but these are the ones I find primarily are my go-to effects. They've all got their place. You don't need all this kind of stuff for singing live. Generally, a little bit of reverb is all you're going to need. But if you're in a covers band, for example, and you're wanting to try and get the sounds of actual the original singers and tracks, then having something like this is a really good way to do it. So I hope that's been of some help. Any questions, by all means, fire them over at me, and I shall try and help the best that I bloody well can. So from me, myself, and I thank you for joining in. Take care. My lips to yours.